Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. I'm so sorry that I haven't been making videos for a while, but it's been a bit of a week. It's been a bit of a month. And the last time I tried to film my February wrap-up, I found out that only 2 minutes of my half-hour filming had actually came through, and the rest had just been not filming, which is fantastic, right? So if this video seems a little bit choppier, it's because I'm paranoid and I'm going to be checking my camera every 3 seconds now. So I do have a new video series for you guys. I know a lot of people want to get into certain genres but really don't know where to start, and I am very, very into certain more niche genres that I know people want to get into. So I wanted to create a series of videos that worked as a sort of starter pack. So I go through and list subgenres within the genre and give recommendations for some of my favorites and some of the ones that are just easier to get into. And I've seen a lot of people recently talking about how they really want to read classics and they seem really interesting, but they just don't know where to start. And I love classics and wanted to, spread that love a little bit. So I have today a classic starter pack video. The first category is children's classics, and I know there are a lot of those, and I think a lot of you might have read them already, but if you do want to get into classics and haven't read anything at all, children's classics are great because the subject material isn't really too heavy and they're usually not too long, but they do have that sort of style that shows up in classics a lot, and some of that older language. So if you are a first-time reader and just want to do something light and breezy, definitely recommend starting with children's classics. The first of which I will recommend is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. So these books are a series, but most people really only read the first one. If you really like it, you can go on to read the others, but mainly people just read the first one, Anne of Green Gables. So this book is set in Canada, and it's about this orphan girl and these two elderly siblings who live in this really small town, and they're living kind of isolated, so they want to adopt an orphan boy to help them on the farm. And it turns out, when they go and get her, that Anne shows up instead, and they decide in the end to keep her. And Anne has a very distinct personality. She's very adventurous and high-spirited, and that can lead to her to do a lot of stupid things, but she's a very kind and sweet person at heart, and you are thoroughly charmed by her. The fact that you are charmed by her is actually one of the greatest parts of this book, because the way the character is written, you could easily get put off by her, but because of the perfect writing style and the plot of this book, you're always on Anne's side and you always really love it. And I definitely recommend trying out this book if you haven't already. Some other books that you could try, which are alternatives for Anne of Green Gables, would be Pollyanna, which is also about an orphan girl, surprisingly. If you like animals, I would definitely recommend checking out Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Another big writer of children's classics would be Frances Hodgson Burnett. So the two books, A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, I would actually really recommend A Little Princess because it's one of my favorites and I can just read it over and over and over again. If you are planning on getting into classics, children's classics are a great way to start. But if you want to try just some simple adult classics, I have some recommendations for that. I actually have two options for more simpler classics that are not quite children's books, but they're not quite full-blown classics, and they're really good, and you've probably heard of them. The first one being Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I love this copy. I love Barnes & Noble classics. They're so pretty, right? But Little Women is about four sisters, Amy, Jo, Meg, and Beth, Beth. Oh my god, how did I forget Beth? She was the greatest character. Oh my god. But basically, their father is gone off in the war, and Meg, the oldest, has to basically support her entire family, all her sisters. It goes through this time in their life and explores each of the four sisters and how different they are. And it's really, really charming and very interesting. Actually has like a fair amount of romance in it, though like it's not overpowering the book. And each of the characters is beautifully fleshed out and just really, really fun. And I would highly, highly recommend it. The next book in this category is something a little less known. It's I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. Dodie Smith is most known for writing the 101 Dalmatians books, which, okay, a lot of you might not know that those were books, but they were books, and apparently really, really good books, even though I haven't read it yet, which is sad because I love this one. But I Capture the Castle, it has a very, very iconic first line, which is, I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. So this book is written in a diary format and follows Cassandra Mortmain, who lives with her father and her sister in this like dilapidated old house that used to be a castle, as said by the title. And their father is a writer who had this one amazingly beautiful like hit of a book and then hasn't written anything since. And her Cassandra and her sister are just trying to get by. Then these two American boys move in next door and their lives get a little more complicated. And that's sort of how this goes. It's kind of a romance. Well, it's a romance, but it's feels like the romance isn't the central part of the book. I think the central and the best part of the book are the characters and how beautifully they're written and how relatable and fun Cassandra is. This copy especially is really important to me because I got it as a birthday gift from one of my cousins. I'm covering up her name, but I got it as a birthday gift from one of my cousins in India, and I treasure it and I love it so much. And I don't know why this isn't very popular, or maybe it is and I just haven't noticed, because it's such a good book. Like, it's so much fun to read and the writing is really, really beautiful. So for simpler classics, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott and I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. So the next category is sci-fi classics. And these are books that are technically sci-fi novels, but are so iconic and well received that they have become classic. I have a lot of recommendations in this one because I love reading sci-fi and I'm very, very into it. So the first book on this list is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. Now, the author, Orson Scott Card, has done some not great things. He's a very open homophobe, and I am not about that life, but his writing is very good, and I like to separate the art from the artist, and I would recommend only buying this book, if you ever do buy it, from a secondhand bookstore, or just getting it from the library, because we don't really want to give authors like this any more money than they already do. Some of you might have read this for school, which, awesome. Like, that's pretty cool. But I really, really love this book. It's in my top 5 books of all time. It's so good. This book is about a future where aliens have already invaded the world once, and now humanity has set up a program to train young people to become commanders and pilots in the army to prevent another invasion. And this book follows Ender, or Andrew Wiggin, who is a third. Basically, most people are only allowed 2 children, and his parents were allowed 3 children only because the children that they already had were very, very intelligent, and they really wanted a third child to see if he would pass the test to go into the space program. And turns out Ender did. And it is a sci-fi novel, but it focuses a lot on humanity and our flaws as people and Ender's flaws as a person and the way he sees the world, which is so different than most people see the world. And it's just, it gives me chills every time reading this book. So would definitely recommend. Just buy it secondhand or get it from a library. The next book I would recommend is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is sort of a children's book. Because it's more sci-fi, I decided I was going to put it in this category instead. If you can see, I did a project on this in like 7th grade and haven't removed these like crazy tabs. It's credited as one of the first dystopian novels of all time. It's set in a world where everything is ordered and structured and given to you, and you can't see color. And you are not really allowed feelings, you're not allowed pain, except the person called the Giver. And when Jonah, the main character, is supposed to be given his job, he is instead given the role of the Giver. And he goes to meet this person and basically finds out that the Giver holds all the memories of all time, of all the pain, of all the happiness. And as Jonah takes those memories from him and learns more about what humanity should have been and what it would have been, he starts to see color. And this book is just fantastic. Like, it's won Newbery Honor Medals, it's been an amazing movie, and it deserves all the hype, honestly. It's so beautiful, and as one of the first dystopian novels, I can see why this might have launched a whole slew of other books like it because of how distinct and interesting the writing style is. The third book is a little bit of an unconventional sci-fi novel, but I read it for school and it was fantastic. Like, literally kids who never like to read, kids who don't read anything, went home and finished the whole book instead of just one chapter. Like, fantastic. And that book is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I have a library copy right now because I don't own a copy of this myself. I'm working on it. I'm gonna get a copy of it. But this book, Kindred, is about Dana, who is a black woman in the, I want to say the 70s. She has just married her white husband, and on her 26th birthday is suddenly dragged back in time to the days in the South of plantations and slavery. And a white boy named Rufus is drowning and she saves him. Her life is threatened and suddenly she returns back home. She realizes that Rufus is her ancestor and she needs to protect him till his child is born. This book explores race, racial issues, the past, in so many different and unique ways. And its use of time travel is less of a sci-fi thing than it is a tool that the author uses to explain all of these things. And just the way she writes Dana, who is just a very relatable character, and you really feel her pain and fear and happiness. And it's a beautiful book, and I think everyone should read this book. It is one of the greatest sci-fi novels ever, and I feel like it should be loved more because it really isn't. For sci-fi, I have 3. Kindred, The Giver, and Ender's Game. So me being the person I am, I have to talk about Shakespeare because Shakespeare, and I love Shakespeare. So I would not read the stuff that they make you read in school. Like, Hamlet is great and all, but can be very dry. If you want to get to the good Shakespeare, you read his comedies. So my favorites are Much Ado About Nothing, and then like Twelfth Night and As You Like It, which I will put up here. But his comedies are amazing. They're funny and witty and always lively and interesting. instead of going into the books, I'm just gonna put it out here that give Shakespeare a chance. The novels are often pretty light, and a lot of times they have this like, if you get like the Folger Shakespeare Library ones, they have this like glossary to help you with words and stuff. And like, just here's a message from me: don't dismiss Shakespeare. His comedy is fantastic, and you might want to give it a try if you haven't read it, since you had to read it for school. The next category is mystery classics. I don't really read too many of these, but I couldn't not talk about them since I've been on an Agatha Christie streak recently, and I love them. My two recommendations are Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, so Sherlock Holmes, clearly, and then Agatha Christie's Everything. But, so, you know, Sherlock, the short stories are really fun and much better than the TV show, just saying, like, terms of writing, much better. So, yeah, the original Sherlock stories are always really fun, and you can probably, like, find all of these at your local library, or, like, even for free if you have a Kindle. You can usually get these for free because they've been published a long time ago. But I really want to talk about Agatha Christie. So this book I have is And Then There Were None, one of the scariest, most thrilling mysteries I've ever read in my life. It basically is set on this little island with, I think, 12 people who have, or who probably have, committed crimes that the court really couldn't try them for. For example, there was a woman who basically killed the kid she was warding with by letting him swim too far and then pretending to jump in and save him because she loved the man who would be second in line to inherit his property, and she really wanted to marry him. So she got off. She never went to jail for that, but someone clearly thinks that they deserve to die because of it. Basically, these people are trapped on this island, have nowhere to go, and people are getting killed off one by one. And trying to figure out who the killer is in this book is a trip. Like, I think there was a quote once that no one can ever write any mysteries anymore because anything that could happen has already been done by Agatha Christie, and this proves it. Like, this book is fantastic. Another one to check out if you want to get into her like more classic mysteries, Hercule Poirot, in particular. Definitely start with Murder on the Orient Express. It's one of the most famous books. If you don't already know the ending, it is like mind-boggling. It's fantastic and a prime example of really, really good, well-written mysteries. As you may have noticed, the lighting changed because that happens all the time in my videos, and I'm very sorry. The next few categories are a little more specific. I want to get into the hardcore classics that are some of my favorites. So Dickens and Austen. So Charles Dickens and Jane Austen are some of the greatest classics writers of all time, and I just love their work to bits, and you can't tell me otherwise because they're fantastic and I love them. If you want to start with Dickens, everyone always says that you should read David Copperfield because that's like his like biggest one. I actually didn't enjoy David Copperfield, which is, I know, yeah, weird, but David Copperfield is very arduous to get through. It's not his best work in my opinion, and especially if you want to just get into his stories, I would not recommend starting with that. I would recommend starting with A Christmas Carol, which I think everyone's probably read, but it's very short, easy to get through. Read A Christmas Carol. If you want to read something that's not A Christmas Carol. Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. So this book follows Oliver, who is an orphan, and it goes through all of his like hardships in life. He starts off in an orphanage, then he gets apprenticed to a grave digger, then falls in with some thieves, and it has a very classic Dickens style of a lot of angst until you reach a very satisfying and nice ending. And it's Dickens, so it's beautifully written, so much fun to read if you manage, like if you've gotten into classics and you like that writing style, Oliver Twist is definitely for you because it gets easier and easier to read, and yeah, I love it. You can't not love Dickens. After Dickens, though, is Jane Austen, who is my queen. Her novels are kind of credited as, like, just campy romances. They are very modern and feminist for their time, and they're classics. She created these romantic tropes. Like, forget about using tropes, she created them. She created enemies to lovers, she created friends to lovers. She created, oh, I was in love with my best friend the whole time. She created, what else did she create? Northanger Abbey. Everyone, at some point wants to feel like a heroine in an Austen novel, and I'm in love with Jane Austen. So if you want to start reading her, I wouldn't recommend starting with any of the other books because you have to get used to her style first, but once you do, you're gonna love it. So start with Pride and Prejudice. Pride and Prejudice is her most famous novel, I guess, but it is famous for a reason. It's very, very good. It has a very coherent and sweet romance, and it's a classic. It's a classic because it's a classic, but it's iconic, like hella iconic. So if you don't know the story of this book, it follows Elizabeth Bennet, who is one of Lydia, Mary, Kitty, Jane, one of 5 sisters. And she is very free-thinking and modern and doesn't really want to think about marriage or men, but her mother has a one-track mind and wants to get all of her daughters married because her father isn't going to be able to give them any inheritance when he dies. So she really, really wants her daughters to be in a good position, which is understandable, but Elizabeth is not about that life. She doesn't want to be married to a man she doesn't love. And one day, this man, Charles Bingley, rents out this one big house in their area, and basically he falls in love with her sister. Mr. Darcy and Bingley's sister Caroline are also with him, and they are not very open people. Lizzie likes to think of them as snobs because they're not as wealthy as they are, and she overhears Darcy saying some not nice things about her, and she forms a very, very bad opinion of him. And basically, they snipe at each other and have this sort of rivalry going on. And I think you know how this ends, but it is so cool because, this is the original. This is where that trope came from, and Pride and Prejudice is everything for me. Read Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen, my queen. Last but not least, if you are feeling brave and feel like jumping into the deep end, this brick of a book, Les Miserables. I'm gonna say it the French way because I can be pretentious. Les Miserables, by Victor Hugo. This is the Penguin Classics translation by Norman Denny, but any translation really is pretty much the same. Hugo isn't really one for prose and stuff, so, which you might not be able to tell from this book, but this is one of the first hardcore classics I read, and I was so into it. The characters are all awesome, and the story is fun to follow and read, and I was constantly engaged the whole time throughout, again, this brick of a book. So, I'm not really going to get into this book because it's kind of complicated, but if you do feel like getting thrown into the deep end and maybe want to discuss it, you can, come talk to me on Twitter because I love this book. Yeah, and so that's that. I will probably make a Goodreads bookshelf on this, and you can probably see that down there. If you have read any of these or you think I should have included some things, please let me know in the comments. I love talking to you guys and hearing from you guys. And if you are planning on trying some of these, definitely let me know. I'm always here to cheer you guys on because I love classics. I love classics and I love getting people to read classics. So thank you for watching and for staying all the way through to this. I do hope you guys read some of these books and this video was helpful to you. Thanks for watching.